The day humanity reached for the stars was the day everything ended. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Hope of Terra, watching the alien ships grow larger on the view screen. 12 human ships had traveled for 3 years to answer a signal from deep space. They carried scientists, translators, artists, and dreamers. They carried no weapons because humanity wanted to show they came in peace. The Varathi did not care about peace. The alien ships surrounded the human fleet in minutes. They were massive, dark vessels covered in sharp angles and glowing red lines. Captain Vasquez tried to open communications. She tried to explain that humans meant no harm. She tried to offer friendship. The Varathi responded with fire. The first ship to die was the Unity, carrying 200 of Earth's best scientists. It exploded in complete silence. Then the Harmony fell, then the Brotherhood, then ship after ship until only the Hope of Terra remained. Captain Vasquez watched her friends die. She watched humanity's dream of peaceful contact burn in the cold void of space. Before her ship was destroyed, the Varathi boarded it. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black, showing no emotion. They walked through the corridors and killed everyone they found. But they kept Captain Vasquez alive long enough to take one thing from her mind: the coordinates of Earth. 1 year later, the sky above every major city on Earth turned red. 3 Varathi battle fleets appeared in orbit. Each fleet contained hundreds of warships, and each warship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Earth's militaries scrambled to respond. Fighter jets launched from every nation. Missiles rose from silos around the world. Brave men and women prepared to defend their home. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Varathi did not even send soldiers at first. They simply dropped rocks. Massive asteroids, pulled from the belt between Mars and Jupiter, fell upon Earth cities with the force of nuclear weapons. London vanished in fire. Tokyo became a crater. New York, Mumbai, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Beijing, Moscow, all of them burned in a single day. 3 billion people died in the first wave. Those who survived fled underground or to remote areas the Varathi did not bother to target. They watched from their hiding places as alien soldiers finally descended to claim what remained. The Varathi moved with terrible efficiency. They rounded up survivors and sorted them like cattle. The old and sick were killed immediately. The young and strong were loaded onto transport ships. Kira Vasquez was 7 years old when the soldiers came to her family's shelter. She was the granddaughter of Captain Elena Vasquez, though she did not know this yet. Her mother pushed her into a hidden compartment and told her to stay quiet no matter what she heard. Kira obeyed. She stayed silent while her mother screamed. She stayed silent while heavy footsteps searched the shelter. She stayed silent for 2 days until other survivors found her. By then, her family was gone. The Varathi declared humanity a subjugated species. Class 7. This meant humans were considered barely intelligent, useful only for simple labor and medical experiments. They had no rights. They had no voice. They existed only to serve the Varathi hegemony, a coalition of 6 elder species that had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans were scattered across 100 worlds. Some went to mining colonies on frozen moons, where they dug for precious metals until their bodies broke. Some went to factory ships in deep space, where they built weapons that would be used against other species. Some went to research stations where Varathi scientists cut them open to study how their bodies worked. Kira Vasquez was sent to mining station Theta 7 on a moon orbiting a gas giant 300 light-years from Earth. She grew up in gray corridors under artificial lights, never seeing a real sky. She learned to work the machines that pulled ore from the rock. She learned to avoid the guards who would beat workers for any reason or no reason at all. She learned to survive. But she also learned something else. Something the Varathi never intended. The older humans on the station told stories. They told stories of Earth, of blue skies and green forests and oceans that stretched beyond sight. They told stories of human history, of people who had faced impossible odds and refused to give up. They told stories of Captain Elena Vasquez, who had died trying to bring humanity to the stars. When Kira learned she shared blood with that brave captain, something changed inside her. She started paying attention to everything. She watched how the Varathi ships worked. She memorized the guard rotations. She learned which alien overseers were lazy and which were cruel. She found other humans who wanted more than survival. They met in secret, in maintenance tunnels and cargo bays where the cameras could not see. They called themselves the Ember, like a fire that looks dead, but still holds heat in its heart. They kept hope alive dot across the galaxy. On 100 different worlds, other groups did the same. Humans whispered to each other in the dark. They passed information through coded songs and hidden symbols. They taught their children to read and write in secret schools. They remembered everything the Varathi did to them, and they recorded it for the day when remembering would become revenge. The Varathi did not notice. Why would they? Humans were just animals to them. Animals did not plan. Animals did not dream. Animals did not spend 300 years preparing for war. On the night of her 16th birthday, Kira Vasquez stood at a small viewport in the mining station. Outside, she could see the stars' millions of points of light scattered across infinite darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, wounded but not dead. Somewhere out there were humans waiting for the signal to rise. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and made a promise. "We remember," she whispered. "And one day, they will learn what that means." 300 years of darkness had begun. But in that darkness, humanity was not dying. Humanity was learning. Humanity was growing. Humanity was becoming something the Varathi could not imagine. The fall was only the beginning of the story. 300 years is a long time to wait. But humanity had learned patience in the darkness of their chains. Admiral Kira Vasquez was no longer the frightened girl who had hidden while her mother died. She was 120 years old now, kept alive by stolen medical technology that the Varathi reserved only for themselves. Her hair was white, her face was lined with scars, and her eyes held the cold fire of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for one purpose. The Ember had grown into something far larger than those first secret meetings in maintenance tunnels. It now stretched across every world where humans lived. Miners on frozen moons passed coded messages to factory workers on orbital stations. Those workers sent information to servants in Varathi households. Those servants learned secrets and sent them further along the chain. Slowly, carefully, humanity built an invisible network that their masters never saw. But information was not enough. They needed weapons. They needed ships. They needed technology that could match or surpass the Varathi war machine. That was when they found the womb deep beneath the surface of Kethros 4, a prison world where the most dangerous human rebels were sent to die. A mining team broke through into something ancient. They expected rock. They found a cavern system that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, filled with structures that had not been built by any species the Varathi knew. The miners sent word through the Ember network. Within weeks, Kira Vasquez herself traveled to Kethros 4, disguised as a new prisoner. She would never forget the moment she first saw the HFY Maker ruins. The caverns glowed with soft blue light from technology that had waited millions of years to be found. Strange machines stood silent in vast halls. Walls were covered with symbols that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. And everywhere, there were storage devices containing information. Beyond anything the galaxy had seen in living memory. The Makers had been a species of incredible power. They had built wonders that made Varathi technology look like children's toys. And then, long before the Varathi rose to power, they had vanished. Some said they destroyed themselves. Some said they ascended to a higher form of existence. Some said the Varathi's ancestors had hunted them to extinction and erased all record of their crimes. Whatever the truth, the Makers had left something behind. Not weapons, they were too wise for that. They left blueprints, instructions, knowledge. Kira Vasquez spent 3 years in those caverns, working with the brightest human minds the Ember could gather. They studied the Maker technology. They learned how to read the strange symbols. They discovered secrets that changed everything they knew about physics, engineering, and the nature of space itself. The Varathi used engines that bent space to travel between stars. It was impressive technology that had taken them thousands of years to develop. The Maker blueprints showed engines that could fold space like paper, crossing the entire galaxy in moments. The Varathi had shields that could stop most weapons. The Maker blueprints showed shields that could absorb any attack and turn the energy back against the attacker. Most importantly, the Maker blueprints showed how to build fabricators' machines that could turn raw matter into anything, atom by atom. With fabricators, humans would not need factories. They would not need supply lines. They could build weapons and ships from asteroid dust and the bodies of dead stars. The only question was, where to build the first fleet. The answer came from an unexpected place. Far beyond Varathi space, in a region of the galaxy that no one had claimed, there was a dead star surrounded by the wreckage of ancient planets. The Ember called it the Hollow. It was perfect. Remote, hidden, and filled with all the raw materials they would need. Getting there was the problem. Kira Vasquez planned the escape for 2 years. They would need to steal a ship fast enough to outrun Varathi patrols. They would need to bring enough people with the right skills to begin construction. They would need to do all of this without alerting their masters. On the night of the escape, everything went wrong. A Varathi informant betrayed them. Guards surrounded the hangar where the stolen ship waited. Kira watched from hiding as dozens of her people were captured. She watched as the Varathi commander ordered them executed one by one. She could have stayed hidden. She could have waited for another chance. But Kira Vasquez had spent a century watching her people die. She was done hiding. She walked out into the open. The guards raised their weapons. The Varathi commander laughed. "One old human," he said. "Do you think you can stop us?" Kira smiled. "No," she said. "But they can." The walls exploded inward. Human fighters poured through the gaps, armed with weapons built from Maker blueprints. They were outnumbered 3 to 1, but their guns cut through Varathi armor like it was made of paper. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Not a single Varathi survived. The stolen ship launched into the darkness, carrying 300 humans toward the Hollow. Behind them, the station burned. Ahead of them lay a dead star and a dream 3 centuries old. They named the ship Defiance. In the Hollow, construction began immediately. Fabricators built more fabricators. Those fabricators built ships. Those ships were crewed by humans who trained day and night, preparing for wars that were still years away. Kira Vasquez pushed them harder than anyone had ever been pushed. She had no mercy, because she knew their enemies would have none. 10 years passed. The fleet grew. Scouts brought reports of Varathi movements and weaknesses. The Ember network continued to spread, now serving as an intelligence organization that knew more about the hegemony than the hegemony knew about itself. Finally, the day came when Kira Vasquez stood before a council of human leaders, representing every colony and station where their people still served in chains. Behind her, visible through the viewport, hung 300 warships. Each one was built with technology the Varathi could not match. Each one was crewed by humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment. For 300 years, they taught us to build their ships, Kira said. They taught us to mine their ore, to run their factories, to maintain their machines. They thought they were using us. They never imagined we were learning. She turned to face the stars. Now we will teach them what humans can do when they are no longer helpless. The liberation wars were about to begin. The Varathi called it the Day of Silence. Subjugation Station Omega-7 was the largest human labor complex in the hegemony. 12,000 humans worked there, building weapons and ships for their masters. Guards watched every corridor. Scanners monitored every heartbeat. Escape was impossible. On a quiet morning, every communication system on the station went dark. Every camera stopped recording. Every lock opened at once. When Varathi patrol ships arrived 8 hours later, they found the station completely empty. The humans were gone. The weapons were gone. The ships were gone. Even the food stores had been taken. All that remained was a message written in human blood on the main hangar wall. We remember. 3 days later, 17 warships appeared in orbit above Thesan Prime, a major Varathi colony. They emerged from folded space with no warning, simply appearing where nothing had been a moment before. The colony's defense grid targeted them immediately and opened fire. The human ships did not raise shields. They did not need to. The Varathi weapons hit their hulls and did nothing. The energy was absorbed, converted, and redirected. Then the human ships fired back in 6 hours. Every orbital defense platform around Thesan Prime was destroyed. Every Varathi warship in the system was reduced to floating debris. And yet, the planet itself was untouched. No cities burned. No civilians died. Instead, the human fleet broadcast a message to every species in the hegemony. Admiral Kira Vasquez appeared on every screen. Her white hair pulled back, her scarred face calm and steady. She spoke in perfect Varathi, a language she had spent decades learning in secret. For 300 years, you called us animals. You sold our children in markets. You cut open our bodies for experiments. You burned our homeworld and laughed while billions died. Today, we freed 40 million of your own slaves from this colony. We ask nothing in return. Our eyes seem to look directly at every viewer. But know this. We remember every world that cheered when Earth burned. We remember every species that bought our children at auction. We remember every hand that held a whip, every voice that gave an order, every eye that looked away. And we are coming home. The broadcast ended. The human fleet vanished into folded space. Across the galaxy, panic spread. The Varathi hegemony had ruled the Orion Arm for 10,000 years. They had crushed hundreds of species. They had never lost a war. Now, suddenly, their invincible fleets were being destroyed by creatures they had dismissed as barely intelligent. They sent their second armada to hunt the human fleet. 80 warships, crewed by the best soldiers in the hegemony, equipped with the most powerful weapons available. They followed intelligence reports to a region of empty space, where the humans were supposedly hiding. The humans were waiting for them. They called it the Ghost Fleet Offensive. 70 human ships appeared from every direction at once, emerging from folded space in a perfect sphere around the Varathi armada. The battle lasted 9 minutes. The Varathi managed to destroy exactly one human vessel before their entire fleet was annihilated. News of the defeat spread despite Varathi attempts to hide it. Subjugated species across the hegemony began to whisper. If the humans could fight back, maybe others could too. Small rebellions sparked on a dozen worlds. Most were crushed quickly, but they forced the Varathi to spread their forces thin. Kira Vasquez used this advantage perfectly. The siege of Thesan was a grinding campaign that lasted 6 months. Human forces did not try to take the planet quickly. Instead, They strangled it slowly, cutting supply lines, destroying reinforcement fleets, wearing down defenses one by one. The Varathi threw everything they had at the siege, and everything they threw was destroyed. When Thesan finally fell, the humans freed every slave on the planet, not just humans, but every species the Varathi had conquered. 200 million beings walked free that day. Many joined the human cause. Ships crewed by mixed species began appearing in the Liberation Fleet, their crews united by hatred of their former masters. But the war was far from over. Varathi still controlled thousands of worlds. They still had millions of soldiers. And they still held Earth. Kira Vasquez never forgot Earth. In every battle, in every strategy meeting, in every quiet moment, she thought about the burned homeworld she had never seen with her own eyes. Her grandmother had died reaching for the stars. Her mother had died protecting her. Millions of her ancestors lay in mass graves beneath scorched soil. She would bring them home. All of them. The liberation wars raged for 7 years. Battle after battle, world after world, the Varathi were pushed back. Human technology proved superior in every engagement. Human tactics were unpredictable and devastating. Human soldiers fought with a fury that terrified their enemies. But the galaxy noticed something strange. The humans did not act like conquerors. They freed slaves instead of taking them. They rebuilt cities instead of burning them. They offered mercy to enemies who surrendered and accepted those who switched sides. On a space station orbiting a liberated world, a Varathi prisoner asked Kira Vasquez why. He had expected torture and death. Instead, he was given food, medical care, and a clean cell. "I do not understand," he said. "We destroyed your world. We killed your people. Why do you not do the same to us?" Kira looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes held centuries of pain, but also something else. Something the Varathi had never shown to any species they conquered. "Because we are not you," she said. "We remember what you did. We will never forget. But we also remember who we were before you came. We were builders, not destroyers. Dreamers, not tyrants. You tried to turn us into animals. You failed." She turned and walked away. The prisoner sat in his cell for a long time thinking about her words. He had been taught all his life that mercy was weakness. Now he was not so sure. Across the galaxy, the war continued. Human fleets struck at the heart of Varathi power. One by one, the pillars of the hegemony fell. And at the center of it all, a burned and wounded world waited. Earth was calling its children home. The Sol system had been quarantined for 300 years. Varathi battle stations orbited every planet. Defense platforms surrounded Earth like a cage of steel and weapons. 20 warships patrolled constantly, ready to destroy any vessel that came too close. The message was clear. Earth belonged to the hegemony. Humans would never return. On the surface below, the scars of conquest were still visible. Craters marked where cities had once stood. Radiation zones spread across continents. The oceans were poisoned, the forests were dead, and the sky was gray with ash that had never fully settled. But Earth was not empty. In deep bunkers and underground shelters, humans had survived. The Varathi had left them there on purpose, a small population to remind the galaxy what happened to species that resisted. These survivors lived in darkness, growing food under artificial lights, drinking recycled water, breathing filtered air. They had no ships, no weapons, no hope of rescue, yet they never stopped believing. Every generation taught the next about the world above. They told stories of blue skies and green forests, of animals and birds, of rain falling on open fields. They kept records of the dead, billions of names carved into stone walls so that no one would be forgotten. They sang songs that their ancestors had brought underground, songs about freedom and courage and home. and they whispered about the children who had been taken to the stars. Someday, the whispers said, those children would return. On the morning of the reclamation, a girl named Maya was tending crops in the deepest level of Bunker 7. She was 15 years old and had never seen real sunlight. The artificial sun that lit the growing chambers was the only sky she knew. Then the ground shook Dot at first. She thought it was an earthquake. Then the alarms started. Then the bunker's ancient communication system crackled to life with a voice that made everyone stop what they were doing. "Children of Earth," the voice said, "we have come to take you home. 400 kilometers above." The reclamation fleet emerged from folded space. Admiral Kira Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dawn, and looked at Earth for the first time in her life. She was 147 years old. She had been born in chains on a mining station, had fought her way to freedom, had led armies across the galaxy. Now, finally, she was home. The planet was beautiful, even wounded as it was. Blue and white and brown, floating in the black void like a precious gem. Her grandmother had died trying to bring humanity to the stars. Her mother had died protecting her from Barathi soldiers. Generations of her family had dreamed of this moment. "All ships," Kira said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her scarred cheeks, "begin the liberation of Earth." The Barathi garrison did not surrender. They had been ordered to hold Earth at any cost, and they believed their defenses were unbreakable. 20 warships and 300 defense platforms opened fire on the human fleet. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human ships cut through the Barathi formation like fire through paper. Maker technology proved its worth once again. Shields absorbed every attack. Weapons punched through armor as if it did not exist. One by one, the defense platforms fell. One by one, the Barathi warships died. Below, on the surface, the bunker dwellers gathered around ancient screens that showed the battle above. They watched fire bloom in the sky, but for the first time, the fire was not falling on them. Maya stood with her family, watching shapes that she knew were ships, even though she had never seen one. Human ships. Her people. Coming home. When the last Barathi vessel exploded, a sound rose from the bunkers. It was a sound that had not been heard on Earth for 3 centuries. The sound of cheering. The sound of joy. The sound of hope. The human fleet descended through the atmosphere. Hundreds of dropships scattered across the planet, carrying soldiers and medics and engineers. They landed near every bunker, every shelter, every hidden community that had survived the long darkness. Admiral Kira Vasquez landed in the ruins of Geneva, where the old United Nations building had once stood. She stepped off her dropship and looked around at the broken stones and twisted metal. Then she walked to a patch of ground where, somehow, grass still grew. She had spent 140 years fighting. She had killed more enemies than she could count. She had watched friends die and had ordered soldiers to their deaths. She had done terrible things in the name of liberation. Now she knelt on the soil of Earth and let herself be just a tired old woman who had finally come home. Around her, other humans were emerging from the bunkers. They blinked in the sunlight, real sunlight, for the first time in their lives. Many fell to their knees. Many wept. Many simply stood and stared at the sky, unable to believe it was real. Maya was among them. She walked out of Bunker 7, holding her mother's hand, squinting against the brightness. The air smelled strange, sharp, and alive, not like the recycled air she had breathed all her life. The ground felt different under her feet, not smooth metal, but rough earth and stone. She looked up and saw the sun. It was more beautiful than any story had told her. A perfect circle of gold and white, hanging in a sky that went up forever. She had seen pictures, but pictures were nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to the warmth on her face, the light in her eyes, the impossible vastness of the world above. Is this real? She whispered. Her mother squeezed her hand. Yes, this is Earth. This is home. That night, humans gathered across the planet. They lit fires in the ruins of cities and shared food from the ships that had come to save them. Soldiers who had fought across the galaxy sat with civilians who had never left their bunkers. They told stories and sang songs and wept for those who had not lived to see this day. In the ruins of Geneva, Admiral Kira Vasquez stood before a crowd of thousands. Her voice, carried by speakers, reached every corner of the gathering. 300 years ago, they tried to destroy us. They burned our cities. They killed our families. They scattered us across the stars and tried to break our spirit. They failed. She paused, looking at the faces around her, old and young, scarred and whole, weeping and smiling. We are the Terran resurgence. We are the children of Earth, united at last. And we are home. The crowd spoke together, the same words that had been whispered in chains, shouted in battle, and carved into the walls of bunkers for 300 years. We remember. We endure. We rise. The stars shone above them, the same stars that had watched humanity fall. Now those stars would watch humanity rise again. The war was not over. The Varathi Prime still stood. But Earth was free. Nothing would ever take that away. Overmind Thelkan was ancient. He had ruled the Varathi hegemony for 400 years. He had ordered the destruction of 17 species. He had watched civilizations burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Now, for the first time in his long life, he felt fear. The tactical displays around his throne showed the approaching human fleet. 3,000 warships, joined by vessels from a dozen species that humanity had freed during the Liberation Wars. They moved through space like a tide of steel and fire. Aimed directly at Varathi Prime, Thelkan had gathered everything that remained of his forces. 2,000 warships, crewed by soldiers who had been taught from birth that Varathi were superior to all other life. These ships formed a defensive sphere around the homeworld, ready to die protecting their master. But Thelkan knew the truth. He had watched the reports from every battle. Human technology was beyond anything the hegemony possessed. Human tactics were unpredictable and devastating. Human soldiers fought with a fury that his own troops could not match. The war was already lost. He was simply waiting to see how it would end. Before the final battle began, the humans sent a diplomat. Ambassador Chen Wei arrived on a small shuttle, escorted by 2 human fighters. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. His great-grandmother had been vivisected in a Varathi laboratory. His grandfather had died in a mining accident that the overseers could have prevented. His father had been executed for teaching human children to read. Chen Wei carried all of this history inside him. Yet, when he stood before the Hegemony Council, his voice was steady and his words were measured. "We did not come for vengeance," he said. "We came for justice." The council members shifted in their seats. They had expected threats. They had expected demands for surrender. They had not expected this. "We came to ensure that what happened to us never happens again to any species," Chen Wei continued. "The hegemony ends today, not through genocide, but through truth. Every subjugated species in your empire will be freed. Every crime will be documented. Every victim will be remembered." He looked directly at Overmind Thelkan. "You will watch your legacy crumble. You will see the galaxy learn what you truly are. And you will live knowing that the creatures you dismissed as animals became the ones who held the power of annihilation in their hands and chose not to use it." Thelkan's forearms tightened on his throne. Rage burned in his black eyes. This human, this thing that should have been property, dared to speak to him like an equal, dared to offer terms as if the Varathi were the defeated ones. "We reject your terms," Thelkan said. "We will fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath. And when we destroy your fleet, we will burn Earth again. We will hunt down every human in the galaxy. We will erase your species from existence." Chun Wei nodded slowly. He had expected this answer. Then there is nothing more to say. He turned and walked out of the council chamber. Behind him, the Varathi prepared for their final battle. The Battle of Varathi Prime was not a battle. It was a demonstration that the human fleet emerged from folded space in perfect formation. 3,000 warships surrounded the Varathi defensive sphere. Around them, the ships of freed species took their positions, vessels crewed by beings who had suffered under Varathi rule and wanted to see it end. The Varathi opened fire first. Thousands of weapons blazed across the void, filling space with deadly light. The human shields absorbed everything, converted it to energy, and stored it for later use. Then the humans fired back. The human weapons used technology that the Varathi could not understand. Beams of light that cut through shields like they were not there. Projectiles that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Energy pulses that disrupted the very structure of matter. The Varathi fleet died in 6 hours. Ship after ship exploded, filling space with debris and dying screams. The defensive sphere collapsed inward, then shattered completely. When the last Varathi warship fell silent, the human fleet held position and waited. They did not fire on the planet. Instead, dropships descended through the atmosphere, carrying soldiers who landed in the streets of the Varathi capital. These soldiers did not burn buildings or kill civilians. They walked calmly through crowds of terrified aliens, broadcasting a simple message. The war is over. The hegemony has fallen. You will not be harmed. Overmind Thelkan was captured in his throne room. Human soldiers surrounded him, their weapons raised, their faces hard. He expected death. He expected torture. He had ordered both for billions of their kind. Instead, Admiral Kira Vasquez walked through the soldiers and stood before him. She was 163 years old. Her body was failing despite the best technology humanity possessed. This would be her last battle, her last duty, her last act as the leader of the Terran resurgence. She had earned the right to decide this moment. "Kill me," Thelkan said. "End this." Kira shook her head slowly. "No," she gestured, and her soldiers stepped back. A chair was brought and placed facing the throne room's great window, which looked out over the capital city and the stars beyond. "You will live," Kira said. "You will have a cell with this view. You will watch as the hegemony dissolves. You will see the species you enslaved build new lives. You will observe the galaxy become something better than what you made it." She leaned closer. "You wanted us to remember what you did to us. You wanted our suffering to be a lesson to other species. Congratulations. We remember. And now you will remember us. Every day, for the rest of your very long life, you will remember that humanity had the power to destroy you and chose mercy instead." Thelkan stared at her. In his black eyes, something shifted. Not understanding, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become understanding. Given enough years, Kira Vasquez turned and walked away. 30-7 years later. The galaxy had changed. The Terran resurgence had become the Covenant of Species, an alliance built on principles that the Varathi would have called weakness. No slavery, no conquest, no subjugation. Every species was equal. Every voice mattered. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation, not war. Earth was green again. Centuries of restoration had healed the wounds of conquest. Forests grew where craters had been. Oceans teemed with life. Cities rose from the ruins, built by humans who had finally come home and by friends from across the stars who had come to help. Admiral Kira Vasquez died on a spring morning. Surrounded by generations of family she had fought to save. Her last words were the same words that had sustained humanity through 3 centuries of darkness. We remember. We endure. We rise. Across the galaxy, a phrase spread among the species that humanity had freed. It was spoken in reverence and wonder, a testament to something no one had expected. Fear the humans, they said, not for what they will do to you. Fear them for what they refuse to do when they had every right. On Varathi Prime, in a cell with a window facing the stars, Overmind Thelkan sat in silence. He had watched for 37 years. He had seen the impossible happen, a galaxy learning to live without empire, without conquest, without the casual cruelty that he had believed was natural. He had been wrong about everything. The humans had been helpless once. They had been slaves, cattle, property. They had been broken and scattered and forgotten. Now they were feared, not because they had become monsters, but because they had remained human. They had kept their souls through 300 years of darkness and had emerged not as conquerors, but as something new, something the galaxy had never seen before, something that gave everyone hope. The stars shone outside the window, endless points of light in the infinite dark. Somewhere out there, ships crewed by dozens of species traveled in peace. Somewhere out there, children who would never know slavery looked up at those same stars and dreamed of futures without fear. Humanity's comeback had shattered the stars, and in the shattering, something better had been born.